Okay. Okay. Good morning. Okay. 52b. Nun Bays, Ahmed Bays. Okay, so we're coming off what we did on Shabbos was that there's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel. What happens in a case where father dies and leaves an estate to his children? A bunch of brothers. Let's call Reuben the oldest brother. And Reuben says, listen, I'll take care of the estate, and all the documents that are going to be sold and money lent will be, and then things that are bought will be for my money, will be under my name, and I'll be in charge of this estate. So, a few $1,000,000 got inherited by all the brothers, and Reuben's gonna be the one in charge. So every document that comes through this estate is on Reuben's name. So if he takes the money and buys another house somewhere, so it's going to be under Reuben Goldberg. It's going to be under his estate. What happens is, though, Reuben claims Reuben is only their brother paternally. They share a father. However, he is from another mother. So all of a sudden, takes a lot of money, and he buys something, or he lends it out. And now the other brothers say that belongs to us. He says, no, it doesn't. That money I got was from the father of my mother. And it has my name on it, on the document. And like every other document, has my name and it belongs to me. And that's the fight between them. So not only is a fight between them, it's also a fight between Rav and Shmuel. So who has to bring a proof? Reuben has a document saying, this field was bought, signed by witnesses, Reuben Goldberg. The brothers are saying, yeah, you used our communal money. That's why it has your name on it, because you're the one in charge of the estate. Right. And he's saying, no, that money's from my Zaidi on the other side. so that's the fight. So Rav said it's on Reuben to have to bring a proof. So that's what the Gemara picks up on right after the two dots on the third line of 52b and then Beis and Beis. So Amar Rav Chisda, when did Rav say that Mr. Reuben, our oldest brother over here, has to bring a proof that these things that were bought or money that was lent out is actually money, from his other grandfather? When did he say, Lo shanu ella de ein chalukin beisasan, chalukin beisasan, emar mi isasan kimates. So there's two ways that you can be in charge of the money of an estate. There can be a trust fund set up, the Goldberg Trust Fund, and all the money's in that pot. Therefore, any money that's taken out of there, the brothers would know about it, right? It's everyone's money. So in that case, if that's the way they set up the trust fund, now you're claiming you have some other money, so go bring a proof. But if the way the money was divided up, that each person got a portion of the money, so then maybe his money that originally was inherited from their shared father, he was smart with his money. He invested, and the money grew. So now that the money grew, very likely that this new property that was bought with his name on it is from either money that grew, or maybe it's from other money. If he has his own, so if you divide up the Goldberg estate between 10 brothers, so the fact that Reuben now has a field with his name on it, that's he does not need to bring a proof that really it's his own money. But if it was a shared pot of money between all the brothers, so then if he comes and claims that something was bought from other money, then he has to bring a proof. What kind of proof are we talking about? Raya b'mai. So what kind of proof? Once again, Reuben has a document that says, I acquired this house, with witnesses and has his name on it. So what? And now they're coming and saying that document doesn't prove anything. Yes, it says you acquired it because you are representing the Goldberg family. However, that doesn't prove that it's from your own money. So what does he need to do now to prove that really he bought it from his own money and not from the trust fund? So Raya b'mai machlokas. Rabba Amar Raya be'edim. So he says you have to bring a Raya be'edim if you have witnesses. Now the witnesses will come and say, so the witnesses are going to come and say that either he got the money from his own pot, or he got the money from his from the grandfather, and that's the money that's on these documents. Rav Sheshes Amar Raya B'Kiyum Ashtar. So we know there's such a thing called Kiyum Shtar. It's a whole large part of the Gemara and Subas. Kiyum Shtar means if you have a document, right, it has two witnesses on it, and now someone is claiming that the document is invalid, right, and they have a valid argument that supports that. So you have to go and be Mekayim the Shtar, validate the Shtar. So how do you validate the Shtar? So different ways to do it. So usually if you find the same signatures of witnesses, you can compare the two signatures, or you can get two witnesses from somewhere else that say we recognize this signature. In this case, the Rashbam says, Bezdin will actually, this is the Shtar that Bezdin went through it. And so I think on the bottom, they write some kind of like validation stamp saying, we validate the Shtar. Now, that works over here because since it went through Bezdin, they would have looked into it and they would have seen that that whatever it says in the Shtar is emes. And since they checked out the Shtar, so therefore the Shtar is valid and he's believed. So he has a Shtar, he has a document saying, I bought this field with his name on it. They're saying, your document proves nothing. He says, well, if I bring you a proof that really the money I got was from, my own money or my other grandfather's money, or another opinion is you can mekayim the Shtar. You could actually, if the Shtar was validated through Bezdin, we assume that Bezdin looked into it and validated it, and therefore his claim remains valid. And other brothers, can't argue on that after you have either a raya, witnesses, or you have kiyum ha-shtar. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So once again, Rav had this statement that that really the older brother has to bring a proof, but that's only when there's a communal trust fund. But if there was no communal trust fund, we believe him. What kind of proof do you have to bring? Either a proof of witnesses or a proof to validate the Shtar, that the Shtar went through the court of law, they stamped it, they validated it, and therefore no reason to assume that he's not saying the truth. Yeah, okay. So Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. So Rava told Rav Nachman, Ha Rav v'ha Shmuel. So we have an argument, Rav and Shmuel, upon who is an incumbent to bring a proof. Does the older brother need to bring a proof? Or do the other brothers need to bring a proof that the money that was used to acquire property really belongs to their trust? That's one machlokas. And then Harab of Harav Sheshes. Now we have another machlokas that according to Rav, that says that the older brother has to bring a proof. How do you bring that proof? Either through witnesses, like we just said, or through the fact that the document went through a court of law. So Rava asked Rav Nachman, Mar Kiman Svirale. You, master, you Rav Nachman. So who do you go like? Rav, Shmuel, Rabba, Rav Sheshes. Amarle, listen, I have a brisa. And the brisa is going to support Rav. He's not answering what he holds about what kind of validation you need. But he is answering upon who is it incumbent to bring a proof. Right? Meaning Rav asked him two questions. There's two machlokas in Rav and Shmuel. Who has to bring a proof? The older brother or the other brothers? That's one argument. Even if the older brother has to bring a proof, what kind of proof does he need? Yeah. So to that he says, listen, I have a brisa, and the brisa is going to support Rav, and that's that. Ana masnisin yadana. I know a brisa. The Tanya echem in akan shay nosev nosev mesok habayis. You have a brother. There's just a paraphrasing. It's the same thing we had on Shabbos, same as the earlier daf. You have a brother who's you have a brother echad min akan, one of the brothers. Shahaya no sein v'nosei. He's dealing in business with his siblings' money, with the inheritance. Besocha bayis. V'hayu onos v'shtaros. There were documents of loan and documents of sale. Yotzin al shmo. That would go out with his name on it. And now one of the documents, let's say, said, either I lent $1 million to someone else, or I bought a big property and who knows where. The Amar Shalihain, he's saying that belongs to me. I use my own money to buy it. The Amar Shalihain, where did I get the money from? Shenafluli mi base avi ima. Yeah, I use money that fell to me from the father of my mother, which you guys are not related to. And therefore, I had that other money, and therefore, I was able to purchase such a big property. So we say, Allah lahavi raya. Oh, that's exactly what Rav says. Rav says the same thing. It's upon the older brother to bring a proof that these things were bought with other money and not bought with the communal estate. Yes. Okay. Yeah. V'chein. Now, this is a little bit just the end of the brisa. So Rav Nachman answered him. I have a brisa that follows the opinion of Rav. He didn't answer the second part about what kind of validation do you need. V'chein ha'isha shehino sas v'nosenes b'soch habayis. So you have a woman, the husband died, and now there are kids here, and she's in charge of the money. So what does she say? She knows documents of loan and sale went out under her name, and so now the children, meaning she was married, she had a few kids, husband died. So the husband's kids, they say, this property, this money was used from our father's property. It's our money. And what does she say? No, it wasn't. I'm not using the money of your father. Rather, Amra Shalihain Shenafluli mi base avi abba o mi base avi ima. I'm using my father's money or my father's mother's money. So now what's the halacha? Aleha lehavi raya. Just like the first case, it's also upon her to bring a proof. Basically, when you're in charge of an estate and you're the one that's in charge of the money dealings, and the fact that your name is on the document, that's just because you're the one in charge of everyone's money. When you want to come and claim something that goes against that, oh no, this other money. So it's incumbent upon you to bring a proof. So, yeah. So the Gemara asks now, Ma'i v'chein. Funny question. Just the price brought two cases and one similar to the other question, to the other case. What's Ma'i v'chein? So there's Ram explains that no, v'chein sounds like, and also this case is me more novel. Meaning if I could learn of the second case out from the first case, the Brisa didn't need to speak out the second case. Must be in the second case, there's a novelty. And since there's a certain novelty, therefore we had to specify the case, right? You can have, if Jules tells me something, right? And he tells me a second thing. So if the second thing was very easily inferred from the first case, you don't need to say it. Maybe you'll say it because you're a nice guy, but you don't need to say it, right? So the Gemara says here that this second case, Ma'i v'chein. So the Gemara says, no, you would have thought that actually the lady does not need to bring a proof. Really, you want to come contest this woman, the almana, the widow? So the children have to bring a proof. Why would you have thought that? Ma'hu detema isha, kevan deshvicha la milsa, the amri katarcha kameyasmi, lo gazlam yasmi. Maybe there's a certain I don't know how they translate in the article, but a praise for the woman. It really is a certain honor for the woman because she's the one that's working so hard,
toiling for the orphans.
She's toiling for the orphans. Thank you.
Steal from them, yeah.
Right. So she wouldn't steal from them. So therefore, since she's working so hard, the fact that she says it's mine, we believe her. Kamash Malan. No, since really she was in charge of the money. If she wants to come and say, oh, the money was from somewhere else, from a different grandfather of mine, it's still upon her to bring a proof. There's interesting. Yeah, okay. Yeah, fine. So that's that. So at the end of the day, when you have people, either a brother or a wife in charge of the estate, either of his brothers or of her children, meaning her husband's children, and they're put in charge of the money, meaning that all the documents that go out, so they have all this money from the estate, and now they can either lend money and there's a document saying their name on it, or they could buy property and there's a document saying their name on it. Any document that goes out under their name, so if they want to come and say that things were bought or lent out with their own money, so it's upon them to bring a proof. Really, the brothers, or in this case, the Yorshim, they have a valid claim that since you were in charge of our money, so that's why your name is on the document. Therefore, whatever you bought, whatever you loaned out, really is also part of our, it's part of our money. Okay. Oh, we're getting now closer to the end of this Mishnah. The Mishnah, 10 and a half daf ago, said that all these cases that you don't establish a chazaka, that was referring to a case where you're being maksik, where you're on the field and you're there for 3 years, and all these unique cases, a husband to a wife and a father to a son, all these cases, each one has their own reason, you don't establish a legal right to the land. But then the Mishnah says, the last 2 lines of the Mishnah were, aval benosin matana, someone gives you present. Someone gives you a present, and he says, let's say in front of witnesses, or he admits to it, that he told you, go acquire the land. So then you don't need 3 years, which we're going to talk about much more in the next daf. That's one. Or there's a case of Achen Shechilku. They divided a property. Or Hamaksik B'Niksei Ager, if you're in the property of a convert who died and it's ownerless land. So in all those cases, in those 3 cases, giving a gift by brothers who are now inheriting or acquiring, they're now choosing the land of their father. He leaves them 100 acres. Each brother goes to take some of the land, or you go to acquire ownerless property. A ger died, he has no relatives, the property is ownerless. Those 3 cases, you don't need 3 years to establish a chazaka. How do you do it? Na'al, gadar, uparat. And that's going to be the discussion for the next, daf and a half. You can go to the land and you make some kind of a lock, na'al, a fence. We'll see the details coming up. Na'al is you lock it, gadar is you make some kind of fence, uparat is you breach it. Meaning, you want to get in and out of the fence, you need an access point, right? So all of those, if it's a kol shehu, a little bit, the Gemara doesn't like ambiguity, so he's going to ask, what's a kol shehu? We're going to go through it. Those 3 cases are the 3 ways that you can acquire these fields. Harezu chazaka. So the first, in many cases, you cannot establish a chazaka by being there for 3 years. And in these cases, if you just do a kol shehu, a little bit of no gadar uparat, of either locking, fencing, or breaching, then you do establish a chazaka. So on that last part of the Mishnah, the Gemara picks up. It said, I don't understand. Atu kol hani damrinon lav b'nei chazaka nenu, meaning only these things you could acquire a chazaka, but everything we said earlier in the Mishnah, then you cannot acquire a chazaka. So what does that mean? The Gemara just picking up on the funny language of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that that in these cases you don't establish a chazaka, and in the last 3 cases you do establish a chazaka. So says the Gemara, Atu kol hani damrinon lav b'nei chazaka nenu. What does that mean? And in these cases you cannot establish a chazaka. Just the way the Rashbam says it. Right. Yeah. So says the Gemara. No. Let's reread the Mishnah like this. This is how you read the Mishnah. B'med dvar mamurim b'chazaka sheyeshi matayna. Kigon mocher omer lo macharti v'lokech omer lakachti. Aval chazaka she'eni matayna. Kigon nosein matana v'achen shechilku v'mak b'seger dil mikne be'almahu. Then no gadar baratz kolshu hare zu chazaka. So the Mishnah is contrasting all the cases in the beginning where it's ein la chazaka to the last 3 cases where it's yes a chazaka. So what's the contrast? You can never acquire property, but here you could acquire property. No. So the Gemara is just saying like this. The first case in the Mishnah, you only acquire them the chazaka sheyeshi matayna. Now, usually that language of chazaka sheishim atayna means if you say I'm here for 3 years and you have a claim and I bought it from somebody. Here, what it means is it really means a chazaka that has someone to contest it. Meaning, the Gemara says like this. Let's say the seller says, Lo macharti, I never sold you this land. And the lokeach says, he contests. And he says, I bought it from you. So those are the cases that are in the beginning of the Mishnah. One second. Yeah. Right, that's all the beginning of the Mishnah. The beginning of the Mishnah is 1 second. Right. The Mishnah said that these people at the end, they cannot establish a chazaka. So the Gemara asked, what do you mean they can't establish a chazaka? No. So right. So basically, the Gemara says that there's 2 categories of people. The first group of people in the Mishnah is one category where they're being challenged, right? So he says, "I sold to you," and he's challenged by, "I didn't sell it to you," and the guy says, "I did." So those are all. That's one. The last 3 cases of the Mishnah is a case of a chazaka where there's no one to contest it. The guy said, "I gave you a present." Guy said, I acquired ownerless property. There's no one to contest it. So in that case, chazaka she'eni matayna could go, and for example, nosin matana, va'achen shechilku va'maksik b'niksei eger. So then you're just acquiring it not from somebody. Delimikne ba'almahu. So then na'al gadar paratz kolshu harei zu chazaka. Yeah. So now basically what the Gemara is saying that there's just 2 groups of cases in the Mishnah. The first group. What? No. Okay. The first group of cases that the Mishnah said, there's no chazaka. There's no chazaka here when there's someone that contests you, right? When you're being contested by your wife, your son, your father, that's where there is no chazaka. However, we don't mean to say that, but the last 3 cases where no one's contesting you, so then there is a chazaka. Yeah, was that clear?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Right. Okay, fine. So that's that. So at the end of the day, the last 3 cases are just cases where there's nobody contesting you, and that's what the Mishnah means. And that's what the Mishnah means. Harezu chazaka. Yeah. Okay. So now, Tani of Hoshia b'kedushin debei Levi. So Rav Hoshia said b'kedushin debei Levi. So the Rashbam, what's kedushin debei Levi? So the Rashbam says it's a Tosef. There was a brisa that was taught in Masechas Kedushin, which Levi organized. We know that many of the brisas were organized by Rav Chi and Rav Hoshia. The Rashbam says this brisa was organized by Levi. So it's in Masechas Kedushin organized. We know that the Mishnah was compiled by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Mm-hmm. But there's many brisas that were flying around also. He chose what he thought was the authoritative Mishnah. And then there's the brisa literally means bara. Bara means outside. And the brisa are outside of the Mishnah. They're also very valid Tanaic sources. So this brisa that was organized by Levi says the following. Na'al, you lock up a field. Gadar, you put a fence in a field. Or paratz, you breach the field, koshu, even a little bit. Bifanav, in front of him. Harei zu chazaka. Let's say you buy a field from somebody. So it says in the brisa, sounds like if you want to acquire the field, you have to do one of those 3 actions in front of the owner. So Jules or Steve sold me a field. I need to go and either Na'o, Gadar, or Paratz, Kolshu, in front of the seller. Says the Gemara, Bifanav in, Shalo Bifanav lo. Why do you have to do it in front of the owner? As long as you acquire it according to legal acquisition, according to to the rules. So then, why do you have to be in front of him? Yeah. So the Gemara says, no. Amar Rava Haki Kamar. Bifanav, when you're in front of the owner, he does not need to tell you lo tzarich lememar the following words: lech chazek ukni, go make a chazaka in the land and acquire it. Because when you're going to buy the land and you do it right in front of him, the fact that he's watching you is the same as saying go acquire it. If we make a deal, I'm going to buy your car, so then and then you watch me take your keys, go into your car and drive away, you don't say anything. What you're saying is go acquire the car. So that's where we say that when you're in front of the person, you don't need to say that. But shelo b'fanav, when you're not in front of the person, in front of the original salesman, original seller, sarich lememar lech asekukni. Then you have to go and tell the buyer lech chazek ukni. Yeah, because you can't if you're not in front of the buyer, you can't go acquire something without the seller knowing. So when the seller tells you go acquire this land, so then we know that he means to sell it to you. The Rashbam says that there are cases where even where money's transferred, still not going to be good unless you say this. So what's an example of that? So the Rashbam says certain cities where they only acquire the fields through documents, they're going to get money also, but the acquisition is only done with a document, not with money. So there, even though money was transferred over, you still have to say lech chazek ukni. Yeah. Okay. Fine. So now, Bayer of Masna. Rav Masna had a question. Heyach Amar Shmuel. 1 second. Sorry, Bayer Rav. So, Rav had a question. This Bryce that we just mentioned, that only when you're in front of the person, the seller does not need to say lech chazek ukni, but when you're not in front of the person, then he has to say lech chazek ukni. So, is that only talking about a sale, or is it talking about a gift? So let's say you want to give a gift to somebody, right? And you want to gift them a large piece of land. So now you want to give them a large piece of land as a gift. So they're going to go and acquire that field either by fencing or locking or breaching, not in front of you. You tell them, go acquire my property in Vancouver, right? So when you sell it to him, you have to make sure that the seller says, lech chazek ukni, go and acquire it. Well, let's say you want to give a gift to somebody. Maybe you love a guy so much that you want to give him a gift. And even if you don't tell him that, it's implied, because a gift is much more of a friendly gesture than a sale. So Bayi Rav, matana heyach. What's the matana? What's the gift? Amar Shmuel, ma'iti ba'ilei Abba. We know Rav's name was yesterday on Shabbos, that Rav's name was really Abba. That was his name. So ma'iti ba'ilei. So what are you asking? Hashta uma mecher de kayoyev lezuzi. Even by a sale where there's money transferred over, it only works. Meaning there you're getting money in return, and yet we still need the seller to say to make sure that the sale is a very good sale. So if you say that in ilo matana lo kol shekain, meaning if by a sale where you're receiving money, you still need to know that the seller really means this sale. Make sure he tells the guy, so then for sure, when the seller, or in this case, the giver of the present, is not receiving any money in return, you better make sure he says, go acquire the land. Because, you can't go acquire without us knowing that the seller or the gifter, the guy wants to give a gift to you, wants to give it to you. So that's how Shmuel responded. He didn't understand Rav's question. Rav said, I understand by a sale, if you're going to acquire the land, not in front of the salesman, of the seller, you have to make sure the guy tells you, lech chazek ukni. But by a present, he was wondering, what's the halacha? So Shmuel said, obviously you have to say it's a kol shekain. Where money is transferred over, you need the words to come out of the guy's mouth. Go acquire my property. Even when he's getting $1 million in return, for sure, and he wants to give you something, if he doesn't say that, like who knows if he's really serious about it. So what did Rav think? Meaning Rav didn't understand this way. Rav thought that it should be maybe different than a sale. Why should a present, a matana, be any different than a sale? The Rav Savar, Rav understood, man di yahev matana, ba'ayin yafa yahev. One who gives a present, he gives it ba'ayin yafa. He gives it basically very generously. And therefore, when he wants to give you a gift, he's not so precise in making sure he says, when he wants to give you a gift, he's gifting it to you. Yeah, you don't need the guy to say lech chazek ukni. Yeah. So now Shmuel agrees that when a guy gives a gift, he does it very generously. The case earlier, Shmuel just says when you want to know, let's say how much, like we had earlier, if you gift land to your wife, right? So she can acquire the land and eat the produce of the field. Why? Because he gives it very generously. Shmuel agrees to that. She's just saying when it comes to acquire, how you acquire the field, we don't say ba'ayin yafa. That we don't say. How much of the field have you acquired? There you'll say. When you give a gift, you do it very generously. No strings attached. But in the way you acquire a field, the method of how to do it, that Shmuel still requires that you have to initially tell the guy, lech chazek ukni. Yeah? Okay. Fine. So back to our Mishnah. You can acquire a field by either one of three ways. You can either make a lock, make a fence, or make a breach in a fence. Kol shehu. What's kol shehu? Says the Gemara, the kama kol shehu. I mean, that's very very ambiguous. What's kol shehu? Kiddush Shmuel, the Amar Shmuel. This is going to go like the opinion of Shmuel. What does Shmuel hold? Gadar gather v'yishli muli asara. You took a fence and you completed it to 10 tvachim. Paratz pirza. Yeah, or paratz pirza. You breached it enough that now you can go in and out. Meaning, basically, you're doing something very significant. When it gets to the level of 10 tvachim, that's already a significant amount. Right. We'll see that people shouldn't climb over, I think, but that's already a significant amount. Maybe it's a divider, or you make a breach, you make an opening in the fence that you can go in and out. That's also very significant. Now there's a point of access. Harezu chazaka. So, hayi geder heichidami. You say you have to make a fence. So, what's the case of a fence? Ilema dimi kar lo hava salkila, v'hashtanami lo salkila. You built a fence so people can't climb over. Now, originally, no one can scale the fence, and now you added a little bit to it, and now they still can't scale the fence. So you didn't. I mean, you added in quantity, but you didn't add in quality. So my oven, what did you do? The eladimi kara havu salkila. So you want to tell me? Well, it's obvious. Originally, everyone could scale the fence. The hashta lo salkila, but after your construction, now nobody can scale the fence. That's great, but one problem. Mishnah said kol shehu. If you do something minor, even a little minor action, you can acquire the field. This is major. The fence was useless before. Everyone was scaling over it, and now you made it useful. Lo tzricha demikara havi salkila. Sorry, v'hashta lo salkila. Tuva avad. You did a lot. So what's the case where you did a kol shehu? You did a little bit. So lo tzricha, we need it for the following case. Demikara havi salkila b'ravcha. Originally, people would scale it b'ravcha very easily. V'hashta kasalkila b'dochka. But now it's very hard to scale. So that's something which is not, you didn't totally prevent people from scaling on it, but it's very difficult. It reminds me of when I was in high school.
Except for your little 8-year-old kid.
Right. In high school, I was a junior. So the seniors in high school, they would often climb over the fence that was like by the street.
Oh, yeah.
So for one time, the person in charge of the field, he decided to put on the top of it a lot of this like black sticky stuff
Oh.
to teach them a lesson, right?
Yeah.
So now they can still do it, but you walk out, all dirty and sticky. Yeah, so that's the case of a culture. Okay, how you appear to hikidami? What kind of breach? A breach of a culture. What kind of breach do you, breach, not preach? What kind of breach do you have to make in the? You can preach about a breach. Yeah. What kind of breach do you have to make in the field? Hikidami. So now, same logic. If before everyone was walking in and out of the fence, and you now also just widened it, so now everyone could also walk in and out of the fence. My ovid, you didn't do anything significant. Maybe originally there was no point of access, so you basically made a nice little pathway. Now you opened it up, and now everyone could enter into the property. So that's that's great, except for tuva of it. You did a lot. That's not a kol shehu. So what's the case where you did something significant, but not too significant, right? So lo tzricha demi kara habu aliba bedochka. Like sometimes if you're on a hike, you can like get through, but it's like you have to crouch through, you have to squeeze through. So people could squeeze through this breach. The hashta, you widen a little bit, aliba berafcha. But now you can go and do a berafcha. There's one case which the Gemara doesn't mention, which the Gemara does not mention. That's na'al. How do you lock? Right? The Gemara only mentioned building a fence, kol shehu, and making a breach of a kol shehu. The Gemara never mentioned what's the case of na'al kol shehu. That the Rashbam says, maybe you locked up with a small lock. You made a stima kol shehu. You closed it up just a little bit. That originally people were going through very easily, and now they're going through, and it's more difficult for them. So you locked it up. You made it more difficult for someone to get in. That's one case of na'al kol shehu. Or that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, if everyone knows the combination, but now you made a combination that only some people know about, right? Or maybe it's very easily figured out. It's like the Schultz address or something like that. Or
that's the point.
That's the 4-year-old, right? Yeah. Okay. He gives a second case, but okay, fine. So those are the different examples of how you do something which is only a kol shehu. That minimal amount in quality, not in quantity, is enough that when you want to go and acquire a field, you can go and do one of those things, and the field is yours. Amar of Asi, Amar of Yochanan, Nasan Tzror, v'hoil, Natal Tzror, v'hoil, Harei Zechazaka. Harei Zuchazaka. So let's say you have, there's a field, and there seems to be some kind of some water nearby. The article says I think it's a dike, there's this kind of dam, some kind of body of water nearby. And now you can put down a stone to prevent the water from going. You can remove the stone and let the water flow through. So that the Gemara considers is something significant, right? You're now irrigating the field. That's also showing ownership of the field. If you want to sell somebody a field and they go do either removing the stone or adding a stone, harei zu chazaka. So it says the Gemara, well, what ma'i nasan u ma'i natal? So, ilay ma nasan tzror. Let's say you put down a big rock, the sachar maya, and now you stop totally the water from going through. So the Rashbam says, let's say you see a big river flowing, ra nar shotef, and you want to enter through a small little hole, and you go and you close up the small little hole. So now the water of the river that's coming through, that's flowing through, is not going to get to your field. Or what did you do? You were natal tzror v'afik maya. You removed the stone which is blocking this flow of water from going into the field. So says the Gemara, it's an interesting concept. It's like chasing away a lion from the fields of your friend. You see a lion coming to your friend's property, and you chase it away. Meaning, there are certain things that we all have to do for each other. Yeah, the Rashbam says the same way when you have to return a lost object. The Kol Yisrael, he says, Mitzuvin lahatzil, Maman Chavreim Min Hahezik. We're all in this together. Everyone has to prevent damage from their friend's property. So if there's water about to rush into your field, right? Or if a field's about to die because there's no water, and you go and do something, you're not showing ownership that you own this field. You're just doing the proper thing that Jews do for each other. So that can't be the example of how you establish a chazaka. Ella nasan tzur detzamad lamaya not till tzur v'arach lamaya. So nasan tzur detzamad lamaya, you go and you seal the water up so that the water stays inside. So basically, you have water that's irrigating your field, and you want it to stay there. So you put up you put a rock that seals it, so the water will stay irrigating your field, and it's not going to flow out. Or the patach lamaya, you remove the rock, and the patach lamaya, that you allowed some water to go through a small little hole in the fence. So you allow the water to irrigate the field. So we're not talking about a case of incredible damage that's going to either ruin your field or totally wash it away. It's on a much smaller scale. You just need the field to have it, to be basically irrigated. So either you're keeping this field, the water inside, or you're allowing the water to come through the hole. So that's a case on a much smaller scale that if you were to do that, that would be a significant way to acquire the field. Yeah, maybe we'll stop here, and then we'll continue tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Okay.